My mother spent her entire life treating me like a public relations disaster waiting to happen. So, when she explicitly ordered me to keep my mouth shut and hide in the darkest corner of my brother's engagement party so I would not embarrass her in front of a two-star general, I followed her orders to the letter. I sat perfectly still in the shadows, playing the obedient, invisible daughter. Until that terrifyingly powerful general stopped his speech, stepped off the podium, walked right up to my table, and told the breathless room that I was the only reason his men came home alive. My name is Amber, and I am 31 years old. The phone had rung at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning. I knew it was my mother before the screen even lit up the dark room. Evelyn is the only person in my life who views other people's sleep as a personal inconvenience. Tomorrow evening, you can join your brother's new family for dinner. Wear something decent, and above all else, keep your mouth shut, she snapped. No greeting. No apology for the ungodly hour. Just a tactical directive. Her father is a decorated general, Amber. Do not embarrass us. I sat up in the pitch-black room, feeling the familiar, bruising weight of being treated like a liability rather than a daughter. I smiled into the dark, a cold, empty kind of smile. Got it, I whispered. I hung up the phone and lay back down, staring at the ceiling, wondering exactly what kind of embarrassment she thought I was capable of. The dinner was held at a private country club downtown, the kind of aggressively expensive venue bathed in low, golden lighting, featuring a string quartet tucked into the corner like polite, rented furniture. I arrived in a simple, off-the-rack navy dress with my hair pulled back. Nothing flashy, because in Evelyn's rulebook, my version of flashy was its own distinct brand of humiliation. She intercepted me at the coat check. She did not hug me. Instead, her eyes scanned me from head to toe like a TSA agent looking for contraband. Her lips thinned into a hard, disappointed line at the sight of my plain dress and practical heels. Without a single word of greeting, she looped her arm through mine, her manicured acrylic nails digging sharply into my bicep, and marched me toward the back of the room as if she were transporting hazardous waste. Table 14, she muttered under her breath, steering me toward a dimly lit corner situated dangerously close to the swinging kitchen doors. Smile, say hello if spoken to, and do not bring up your situation. Let Holden have his moment. I nodded, pulled out my chair, and slipped into the shadows. It was easier this way. Disappearing into the wallpaper was a survival tactic I had perfected over 3 decades. From my corner, I watched the golden child soak in the spotlight. Holden looked genuinely happy, laughing effortlessly beside Vivian, who radiated the kind of easy, untouchable grace that only comes from generational wealth. They were the perfect centerpiece for Evelyn's grand social production. I watched my mother hover around their table, a desperate social climber orchestrating the ultimate upper-crust illusion, constantly checking over her shoulder to make sure the family's dirty little secret me was still securely hidden by the kitchen doors. I sat perfectly still. I made polite small talk with a distant aunt who asked if I was still figuring things out, patting my hand with weaponized pity. I drank exactly 1 glass of club soda with lime. Nobody asked about my life, because nobody assumed there was anything worth asking. In their minds, I was just a low-level data archivist, a spinster who had failed to secure a husband, a corner office, or a Pinterest-worthy home. And I let them believe it. I had left active duty 2 years prior for reasons that belonged solely to me. Explaining the absolute, visceral hell of forward operations to people who were already committed to misunderstanding me felt like throwing rocks into a frozen lake. It was infinitely simpler for Evelyn to market me as the disappointing, unpredictable daughter. So, I kept my mouth shut. I played the part. I watched the elite crowd mingle, entirely unaware that the quiet woman sitting next to the busboy station had spent her 20s making life-or-death tactical calls in environments they could not survive for 5 minutes. Then, the clinking of a silver spoon against a crystal champagne flute cut through the jazz music. Holden's future father-in-law stood up, his presence instantly vacuuming the air out of the room. He was a man of immense physical stature, his dress uniform pressed with such razor-sharp precision it looked like it could cut through stone. Rows of medals lined his chest like a silent, terrifying ledger of a life spent in the fires of conflict. A story most of the people in that room were utterly incapable of comprehending. General Whitfield raised his glass. The room leaned in, charmed and hungry, the way rooms always lean toward men who wield that kind of absolute gravity. "I have spent my life in the service of this country," he began, his voice a low, gravelly hum that didn't need a microphone to reach the back of the hall. "I have seen courage in places where most people fear to even look. And tonight, I see that same spirit in Holden." Evelyn was beaming, her hands clasped tightly under her chin, finally tasting the social validation she had craved for years. Then, the general's eyes moved. They shifted past Holden, past Vivian, and past my mother's frozen, expectant smile. His gaze locked onto me, sitting in the gloom by the kitchen doors. He stopped mid-sentence. It wasn't a tactical pause for effect. It was a full, jarring stop, the kind of silence that makes people shift in their chairs, a primal instinct signaling that the predator has found its mark. He set his glass down on the table with a slow, deliberate clink. He didn't look back at the audience. He turned his entire body toward the corner where I sat, and he began to walk. 200 pairs of eyes followed him, confused and anxious, tracking his path like he was the only source of gravity in the building. My mother's hand tightened around her linen napkin, so hard I could hear the fabric groaning under the strain. Holden's smile withered, his eyes darting between his future father-in-law and me, frantically searching for an explanation I didn't have yet. The general reached my table. He stood over me, his towering frame casting a long, imposing shadow across my navy dress. He tilted his head, studying me with an intensity that felt like a laser scan. He looked at me the way you study a ghost you are not entirely sure you ever needed to acknowledge again. The string quartet had stopped playing. Nobody had instructed them to, but the air in the room had become too thin for music. "Hello," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the dead silent hall. "I am surprised to see you here." He paused, a flicker of something ancient and unreadable crossing his face. Then, in a tone that sounded like he was about to unravel a secret that would burn the entire room to the ground, he asked, "Who are you to them?" The silence stretched so long I could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass 3 tables away. My mother's face had completely drained of color, her mouth hanging slightly open as if she had forgotten how to breathe. Holden looked between me and the general like he was watching 2 entirely different realities collide. I set my glass down carefully. My hands were remarkably steady. I pushed my chair back, stood up to my full height, and looked General Whitfield directly in the eye. "I am Amber," I said, "Holden's sister." It was not the answer he was looking for, and we both knew it. The corner of his mouth twitched. He looked like a hardened soldier enjoying a profound, private truth that the rest of the oblivious room was completely blind to. "Captain Amber Reyes," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, striking the room like a physical blow. He spoke a rank I had not heard uttered aloud in over 2 years, a rank my own mother had vehemently refused to acknowledge because it did not fit into her pristine, country club aesthetic. Joint Special Operations Command. A collective, breathless gasp rippled through the nearest tables. The general did not break eye contact with me. "Forward operations. 3 years ago. You briefed my extraction unit under heavy fire in the Eastern Corridor. Your tactical intelligence was flawless. You are the direct reason 11 of my best men came home to their families instead of 7. He stated it plainly, without an ounce of theatricality. He spoke the way men of war speak of horrors and heroism, stating facts that other people spend their entire lives trying to earn the right to say about themselves. Somewhere across the room, Evelyn's heavy silver fork slipped from her trembling hand and clattered violently against her fine-boned china plate. Nobody moved to pick it up. I had never planned on this room knowing. I had let everyone keep believing the pathetic, wallpaper version of me because it was easier than fighting a family that was committed to misunderstanding me. But standing there, bathed in the sudden, blinding light of the truth, the heavy armor I had worn for years finally cracked open. I turned slowly to look at my mother, the woman who had shoved me into the shadows by the kitchen doors. You explicitly ordered me to keep my mouth shut tonight, Evelyn, I said. My voice was eerily calm, the exact kind of calm you master when panic is no longer an option, so I did. The rapid mental arithmetic of the socialites around us was almost visible. Relatives who had spent the entire evening glancing past me like I was a stain on the carpet were now staring with sudden, terrified reverence. They were realizing, in real time, that they had fatally misjudged where the actual power in the room resided. Vivian's hand had flown to her chest, her eyes wide with dawning awe. Holden looked paralyzed. Like 6 years of my mother's toxic half-truths were violently unraveling right in front of him. General Whitfield slowly turned his attention to my mother. Evelyn looked as though she might physically collapse under the crushing weight of his gaze. I do not embarrass easily, the general said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register. But I will tell you exactly what disgusts me. Watching a family treat a woman who has earned more respect than every single medal on my chest, as if she is a burden. Evelyn opened her mouth, desperately scrambling to rebuild her shattered social facade. Amber, why did you never tell me? She stammered, her voice thin and panicked, automatically defaulting to her favorite role, the victim. I looked at the woman who had spent 31 years treating me like a stain on her perfect design. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. You gave me a direct order to keep my mouth shut tonight, Evelyn, I replied, my tone completely devoid of emotion. I was simply following orders. And besides, unlike the general's men, you never earned the debrief. I did not wait for her to formulate another excuse. I turned my back on the stunned room, walked out through the heavy mahogany doors, and stepped into the crisp night air. For the first time in my life, the suffocating weight of their judgment was entirely gone. If this story of absolute, cold-blooded karma satisfied your soul, hit that subscribe button. What would you do? Would you have stayed to watch the toxic family completely unravel, or was walking away the ultimate power move? Let me know in the comments below.